and I became the largest producer of Hawaiian language media in the state. And I did, the KITV Hawaiian Word of the Day for a long time. I did a lot of stuff, and I still occasionally get gigs from them. Like I've been editing some podcasts by them called Pana Points, which has been really interesting. I love working with the Hawaiian community because I learned so much about this place and its history.
Hi, everyone. This is Chuck Huber, the voice of Hiei from Yu Yu Hakusho, Android 17 from Dragon Ball Z, and you're listening to Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova podcast. Aloha.
Aloha and welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova podcast. I'm your host, Mekel Kasanova, and today I'm joined by a phenomenal guest, the one, the only GB Hajim. How you doing, man?
Aloha, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's an honor to have you on the show. Probably one of the biggest guests I've ever had on the show. Like all your accomplishments.
Oh my God, my head's swelling. Oh my God, we got to get a bigger room here. My room's not big enough for the head that you're giving me. Oh my God. And that is so poorly worded. Let me back up. Yes.
Hey, the kids are not going to get it, so it's fine. It's fine. Okay. You are a very accomplished director, writer, producer, filmographer, cinematographer, so many different things. And one of your most recent movies, Mermaids Lament, took off. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about all your work, but let's talk about Mermaids Lament first. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to just give the pitch and then you can just ask me questions about it. But it's live on Amazon streaming right now, and really appreciate that your audience go out there and watch it. And please, please, please post reviews on Amazon, because independent filmmakers, we live and die by our fan base and our audience supporting us. And if we get enough reviews, then Amazon keeps us on and puts us on the Prime page, and then we can make more movies. And without your support, we will not be making more movies. So please, please, please go on there and rent the movie and tell me what you think of it right there in the review box on Amazon.
Awesome. So, and that's very true. I think, we could spend a little time talking about that in the sense of like the audience, those of you who consume content, if you're watching movies, especially for, like you said, for independent filmmakers, if you're watching YouTube videos or listening to podcasts, your input is so critical. Like, we need you guys to leave reviews, leave ratings, share our work, talk about it, because that's what keeps the lights on. That's what keeps us being able to do what we do. All right. So one of the questions that I want to ask you in regards to the movie Mermaids Lament was, what was the inspiration for coming up with the movie? Like, what was, when you were writing a script and coming up with all the ideas, like what inspired you?
How long do you have?
As long as it takes.
Okay. I'll try to short it. Well, back in 2015, I started writing this really, really fun horror comedy called The Big Pig, which is set here on the Hamakua coast. And me and my writing partner, we worked on it really hard. And by 2018, it was in really good shape. And we'd won some awards, like placed in semifinals and quarterfinals, and some screenwriting awards. It got some attention. I took it to the American film market via Hawaii Creative Lab, which actually paid for the trip. I was able to, through that trip, raise what would be like a quarter of the budget. And then I made some more connections to, instead of shooting in Hawaii, bring the Hawaiians to Colombia and use their tax credit there to shoot it there. And I was getting ready for all that. I had $500,000. I was starting to work with the Colombian government to get the other $500,000 from them, and putting together a crew and a team in there. And then this thing that you might have heard of happened, COVID, and everything fell apart. And I was devastated because we'd been working on this for, at the time, it's like 4 or 5 years. We've been working on this project and trying to get it going. And we were right at the cusp, and it just completely fell apart with no indicator that I could raise the money again anytime soon. So I was devastated, but Creative Lab Hawaii came through. They did this intensive workshop for producers, and one of my mentors was Sean Baker, who's famous for his movie Tangerine, which he shot on a bunch of iPhones. I mean, it wasn't completely low budget. I found out later it's about $100,000 budget, but he shot it on iPhones, and that's how he did it. And what his advice was: look around you. What do you have right around you that you can make a movie, that you don't have to ask permission, that you don't have to raise money? Go out and make that movie. I mean, he was saying it almost directly to me because I have equipment and I have experience and all that. He's like, go out and make a movie. And that was in March. And I that instantly thought about, well, I'm always in the water. I should do something in the water. And when I was thinking that, the title popped in my head, Mermaids Lament. I had no idea what it meant to me. And I didn't really know. And I just thought about it a while. And there's this fascinating film that I really like called Man Facing Southeast. It's an Argentinian film made in the 80s by Alicia Subuela. And it's about a guy who shows up at a sanatorium and claims he's an alien. And at first they just think he's crazy, but certain things happen and his direct doctor starts to wonder if this guy might actually be an alien. And I just thought that the way that they told the story and the way that the normal was made felt extraordinary. And I loved it. It's a small movie, but it did some fantastic stuff with really, really base things. And I like, that should be my model, because they made a science fiction / fantasy film with no special effects, so like that was my model. Like, okay, what can we do like that? And then so I started workshopping the script, and then I brought in one of my lead actresses, Deva Escobar. She was at high school with my son, and I saw her in lots of plays because my son was like in every play, and she was in every play. And she, ironically, she played the Little Mermaid in the play at her high school. And so I said, David, you want to be a mermaid again? And she totally was excited. And so we started workshopping, and we both have shit tons of trauma and shit tons of mental issues that we are fighting with. And we just mine the crap out of that. And then we, like some other people on our crew, like Liz Saris and everything like that, everybody just threw all their mental struggles on the table, and the events that, coping events and events that were disastrous for us. And we threw them all on the table. We kind of crafted a script out of the real things that had happened to us in our lives. And remember, this was like, like the end of March where I had the idea. And by the end of May, we were shooting. So usually it's like a 2-year process for me to just even finish a screenplay. And this was 2 months, basically. So it was a very different process for me and a very different experience for everybody, because like we were just a small family of initially just 5 people was the crew. And we ended up being 7 to 8 people of the crew by the end. But yeah, it was just the 5 of us in the beginning. And then on the big days, like when we had the big Mermaid Day, we had a much bigger crew and we had 20 some odd mermaids in the water also. So when we had a safety crew and all that, so that was like one of our big days. But did I cover it? Did I cover did I answer your question?
I mean, you did. And I'm like, just trying to make sure. I'm like, you didn't spare any details, did you? Because we love the details. We love the sauce over here. So,
well, you could dive into like the equipment that we used and how that was kind of a mess, and we made the best. And then I got this great colorist to make our 5 different cameras look like one camera.
Wow, really?
Yeah, we had I think at least 5 different cameras, because when we started, we were going to shoot on this one guy's Blackmagic, and it wasn't doing the right kind of frame rate and resolution that we wanted. And so I upgraded my Canon 90D with a Ninja 5 so that I could record RAW and ProRes. And so we shot a lot of it on that, which right out of the camera has really good color. But then we were joined by Ron Murray, who ended up being our second DP, and he brought in his Sony A7, and that was even though you have to color everything because out of the camera it looks like a raw footage.
Yeah.
That the images are so phenomenal. Like most of the underwater stuff was Ron stuff. Like some of it was my GoPro. Mostly the black and white stuff is my GoPro because when you pull color out of GoPro footage, it actually crisps up and looks magical. That GoPro footage can get really soft really quickly if you fuck with it. So I do not advise using a GoPro unless you're pulling the color out of it. So there were a lot of like technical hurdles. Some of them don't matter anymore. Like the sound was really difficult to catch in some of the environments that we're in. But God, the new Adobe Premiere with their audio enhance, it just when I was doing the special features documentary for the DVD release of the movie, we had all this ocean noise in the background of the interviews, and I put audio enhance in Adobe Premiere, and there's no ocean noise. It's just gone. It's insane. Yeah. So the technology just moves forward so quickly. You know, by the time you finish something, like the way you would do it next time, it is different. Absolutely different.
Yeah, and it's touching on like when it comes to like touching up audio and as well as video, like all the tools that are available now. And I've had so many people say to me like, oh, it's so complicated and complex trying to learn how to do touch ups on videos or video editing or audio editing. I'm just like, you have no idea how far it's come. Like before,
oh my God,
go ahead.
Well, yeah. You like you said you were going to ask me about like what it was like when I first started. I started in reel-to-reel video and actual film, 8mm, 16mm, and a tiny bit of 35. Like so, people complaining about how complicated it is now. When I was coloring my graduate thesis film, I had a 50-page notebook that I had to pencil in all the frame numbers and what color temperature I wanted to adjust those frames to.
Really?
So like start frame this frame and start end frame this frame, I want to adjust the color temperature this much, and you had to know enough about color temperature adjustments that you nailed it because it costs you a lot of money to get your film color adjusted, so that we're taping and gluing the film together when we're editing it. I cut on flatbeds, and even early days of video, I was cutting, actually cutting the videotape, and taping it together. So yeah, people should not complain because, it's too hot in their edit room and the glue won't stick and your film falls apart. I'm like, come on, you guys, it's so much easier now. So much more potential what you can do, Yeah, and audio is so easy now compared to get good audio and fuck it up and make it sound the way you want. You have so many tools, and they're cheap as hell. Like, back then, I had access to some, good audio studios, but you had a rack of 20, 30 grand worth of tools, and that all comes standard with Adobe Audition now,
Yeah. But you'll have people that are complaining about, oh, I have to pay for a subscription, I don't really own it. I'm like, but they're constantly updating it, giving you brand new features, making things so much more streamlined. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, and my first video camera, which shot 720p, not 4K, not even 1080, 720p, it was $5,000, and now my phone is way better quality, at $1,000. And my Canon 90D, was, I think the body was $1,200, and it shoots way, way better than my $5,000 camera. So yeah, and the price of everything. And yeah, my first animation equipment was, Silicon Graphics workstation, like 40 grand. I didn't own it. I was working for somebody else, but it's like, just to get into animation was like 40, 80 grand if you wanted to animate digitally, and if you wanted an analog, oh my God, it's the time you spent. I've done it all. I've done analog animation. It takes forever. Yeah.
Wow.
So
okay, I know we're talking about Mermaids Lament, but
Okay.
I kind of want us to step in the DeLorean, and I want you to walk us through, like, what got you into wanting to make films and being the creative that you are. Like, what was that inspiring moment for you?
Oh, drugs. No. I've always been creative, but it was shunned in my household. Like, it was very, very much shunned, and that what I did creatively when I was young was not appreciated in my local community because there's a lot of racism against me, and like I never got any kind of art award growing up, and then suddenly in high school, when I happened to be recovering from a suicide attempt and like locked in a facility, I won a national contest where they were going to display my painting at the Congressional Hall in Washington, D.C. That was my first award that I ever won in art.
Oh.
And so we had to get a special disposition to release me from the mental hospital to go to Washington and receive my award, and then they locked me up again. So
What?
It was I had a rough childhood. I had a really rough childhood, and that gave me a lot to draw upon as far as being a creative person. It gave me a lot of drive too. But I still, when I went to college, I still was like going for astrophysics. I wanted to be like either a engineer or just the theorist to like work with gravitational forces. I really was fascinated about how gravity affected what changed shape around large celestial bodies like Jupiter, like how gravity actually warps space. Like I always thought that was so fascinating, and I really was into studying it. I was into the math of it. Like I loved it, and I was digging it. And two things converged around that time. One, the realization that the space program was getting downsized, and that we really weren't making a commitment to space in any real way, not the way that I dreamed when I was watching Star Trek when I was a kid. And the other thing is I was in a quantum mechanics class, and we were talking about these subatomic particles that were even smaller than the ones that were barely proving the existence of. And I'm like, how can we like do this, like go and take this leap, and that, like the professor was like, you kind of got to take a leap of faith, based on the math and blah, blah, blah. And like, leap of faith? What are you talking about? It's like, the best practices, best, theories that we got going, best hypotheses, this is how we move it forward. And I'm like, I basically, and I was doing a lot of LSD at the time, still getting straight A's, kids, still getting straight A's, but,
hey, that's what matters.
And I was taking math for physicists and engineers, and it was rough. And I basically said, I don't want to do this, like struggle so hard at this anymore for babies and what ifs and all that. And there was this huge presumption in the science world that the art world doesn't have. The art world is basically, this is all just my opinion. This is just my point of view. Take it or leave it. This is what it means to me, and maybe it means something to you. And I like that. And so I switched over to visual arts and media science. I still had to do a little science because I got both sides of the brain running. And so I double majored at UCal San Diego in visual arts and media science. And I started exploring all the different visual arts. I did painting, I did drawing, I did installation works. I did this huge installation where I brought in all these things from the forest into a studio, like a gallery, and we even brought in birds and everything like that, so people like that were in the city could experience nature again. And then at the other side of things, I built the largest sweat lodge in San Diego County, and we brought like 600 people through it. And then I got hired to do sweat lodges all up and down the West Coast, all the way up to Vancouver and Victoria in Canada, all the way down to San Diego. And then I did muralism because at a very young age, I was selling paintings, and the paintings were being taken and put in collections, and nobody was seeing them anymore. Like people, like my first painting that I won that award for, a corporation bought it for what would be about 20 grand these days, and put it in their vault, and nobody got to see it again. And so like, I felt like, why am I making art? You know, it's like people are going to either like hide it in their homes or like lock it away in a vault. And so I started doing more about public art, like the installation, like the Sweat Lodge. And then I got into muralism. I worked with a bunch of orphans along the border in Mexico, you know, doing murals on the orphanages, and did proposals for other public murals, and more often than not get shut down. And so I didn't want to go through the approval process and all the bureaucracies and people like, you know, fighting over whether they want my mural or not. I did a bunch of murals around San Diego County, but and they're still up there. Some of them are still up there. But then just film kind of like came out as like as a thing to do. Like I was doing photography, and so I started playing with video and film. In media science, I was doing video, and then on the visual arts, I started doing film. And I had some great teachers, not necessarily great people, but I had JP Gorin, who was Jean-Luc Godard's AD, so very much immersed in the French New Wave, and he was one of my teachers, and brilliant film guy, kind of creepy human being, but great film person. And sorry, JP, if you hear this, it's the truth, man. And then I had Babette Mengolt, who was at the forefront cinematographer in the feminist movement. She was like one of the first big European female cinematographers to get well known. And she was one of my teachers. And so I had some great people theory-wise on what film is about, and delving really, really deep into it. Not like USC, UCLA, let's get ready for making movies in Hollywood. Like, you know, what is myth making? You know, what is storytelling? How does it affect the psyche? You know, so that was my, you know, foundation. Like that was my foundation before I built. And so I guess that's the beginning of the career. Is that enough?
I mean, I'm over here like, do we have to get out of the DeLorean? I'm loving this.
Oh, well, I'll tell you about like one of my first professional gigs. I have two really great stories, and they're both kind of trial by fire, as I just thought of. Like one of my first professional gigs. This guy Tony Ramos, who was a television producer, who was actually in Tehran when the embassy got taken, and he was one of the guys covering that, and he was one of my teachers, and he got a gig from National Geographic to go down to the Sonoran Desert in Mexico and do some wildlife photography. And I got hired to be on that crew, and we were out there, like, people complaining about how hard it is now. I was carrying 110 pounds worth of video equipment in 110 to 115 degree heat, you know. Jesus. You know, so like, it's so easy compared to that. You know, and like they would be like, hey, we want to go up and get a shot from that mountain over there, and it's like 110 out, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm young, I'll carry all this shit, like pounds and pounds of batteries, and like we're getting up there, and then like, okay, why don't you go chase that jackrabbit out of the woods? Like, there's rattlesnakes. There's rattlesnakes everywhere, you know, and the jackrabbit's almost as tall as me. It's like, you know, it's like, you know, and you're kind of delusional because you're like a little bit dehydrated and it's so hot. And that was my first professional gig. It was fun. Like we spent the nights on the beach down in Sonora to stay a little bit cooler, and yeah, it was a great experience down there. That was my first one. My first one in Hawaii. It's also another story. Okay. I don't know if we have time for all of this.
I mean, it's up to you. I'm running off of your availability. Like I'm here for the story. I'm loving it.
Okay, well, you edit this if it's just too long. Okay, so I come to Hawaii. I come to Hawaii.
All of it.
I come to Hawaii, and I'm fresh out of an MA program where I specialized in technical theater and film directing. And so I have an M. And I also taught a lot of classes in the tech aspects of film. And, you know, so like I was well versed in how to do everything production wise. I'd worked on a bunch of independent features. And I come here and I can't get into making movies or TV here. Like I can't. Like I'm here for years. And I even flew to Oahu and put my name on the union register a few times. Like, hey, call me up. I'm available. You know, because you got to get called. They don't, like, if you're not in the union, you just got to bring you in. And so, like, I kept on doing that. But Waterworld had just wrapped, and things were really on a downturn on the Big Island. Wahoo still had production, but I couldn't break in for whatever reason. And I was being a substitute teacher at Kamehameha schools. I was doing beekeeping. I was mixing music for, because like I had experience in beekeeping. So I was beekeeper. And then, and I had a terrible schedule because like my other gig was mixing music for live bands in the middle of the night, you know, and which was great. Like, you know, I got to see some great musicians and work with some great musicians. And they've all still my friends, which is fantastic. But awesome. I couldn't get a gig, but my name was out there. Everybody knew about me because I was so trying to do this. And there was something called the Jason Project, which is this crazy live TV show that had been filming all around the world, really well funded, huge project where they bring in satellite transmitters to remote locations and they broadcast these live events to classrooms all around the world to get kids excited about science. And they were shooting out at the volcano right down there by the ocean at the active lava flow, like on the actual flow. They had a huge crew, like 50 or 100 people down there. It was a huge production. And they've been rehearsing down there for safety reasons for 2 weeks before they went live. And the night before their live broadcast, the two sound guys, and they had an inverted schedule. They were shooting at night. So the call time was around 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And so the two sound guys obviously tapped out from this inverted schedule, didn't make this certain left-hand turn. And anybody who's been in the park knows which left-hand turn I'm talking about. It's like when you're turning onto the Chain of Craters Road, there's a tree right in front of you. And it's like, it's this tight left turn. And they didn't make it. They went straight into the tree. One guy in a coma and the other guy broke his back. And they were out, they were out. And so I got a call in the middle of the night. Hey, can you walk backwards over hot lava holding a boom mic? And I can do anything, man. Fuck, I'll do anything. I want to get in this business. I will do it. And so the next day I show up with my hiking boots, whatever gear they told me about, and no rehearsal. I didn't get any safety rehearsal. And we're down there on this brand new flow. It's an hour old. And the air temperature is like 140. The ground temperature is 400, 500 degrees where I'm walking. And then there's cracks in the lava over 700 degrees. And I can't step on the cracks. Jesus Christ. So they get me rigged up with this wireless boom. And I'm supposed to walk backwards in front of the scientist across this lava flow while they shoot him, discussing about what the science of a new flow is, like what's happening with the degassing, viscosity and all these kinds of different things. And so I get set up and they roll camera and I'm walking backwards. And, this is the gig. This is the make it or break it moment. And I look down and the glue that is holding the soles of my hiking boots on is obviously melting because the soles are starting to slide off. And I'm just thinking about just get through the shot, because if I break right now, I will never work in this town or this state ever again. And sure enough, I get through, they cut and I get through and the gaffer comes over and he staple guns my soles on, and we get set up because we're doing multiple broadcasts for each time zone. Like we, start like someplace in like Berlin and then we move across all the different time zones until we get to like DC, in the morning, so we get set up for the next time zone and I walk out there and I do the same thing. And I'm looking down, make sure I'm not stepping on any of those cracks, those 70-degree cracks and everything like that. And I get the sensation in my feet and my analytical brain breaks it all down. That's hot. And those were metal staples. And what's happening is that 400 to 700 degree heat is going right through the staples and burning my socks right now. And I got to keep my cool. Oh, shit. I got to keep my fucking cool because otherwise I will never work in this town again. And so I get through that shot, cut, call the gaffer over. We got to come up with another solution. Yanks out the staples, duct tapes it on. Lots of duct tape. Duct tapes on.
Duct tape saves everything.
Yeah. Most of the time. Most of the time. So I get set up. I, get in front of that scientist. He starts, they roll camera. He starts giving a spiel. I'm walking, being really careful. And I smell smoke. And I look down and the duct tape is starting to catch fire. It's smoking. And then before the end of the take, it's like on fire. And I'm just like, gotta keep my fucking cool. Just get through this one fucking thing. And the guy yells cut, the producer yells cut, and the director yells cut. And it's like, and the gaffer comes over and they fire extinguisher out my shoes, and I'm like that. And somebody ran to town and got me some other hiking boots that had sewn on soles, like ones that were woven on rather than glue held on. And so that solved that. But that's my real trial by fire. And then after that, I was like working up at the volcano for 2.5 years, shooting stuff and being sound guy, whatever, grip, gaff, whatever. And then ended up co-producing along with Mekel the definitive documentary, The Park, that Discovery Network and Learning Channel picked up. And also for 15 years, a short version of that, they showed it to all the park visitors. So like probably my most well-seen film, probably like 5 to 10 million people saw that movie. So yeah, and then during that time period, I started learning how to speak Hawaiian and started doing little things with the Hawaiians. And then after I was doing so much volcano stuff that a Seattle TV station came out to film Mick and I working out there at the volcano, and they did this helicopter shot of us walking up the Pu'uo'o while it's erupting. And my wife, now ex-wife, saw that footage. She's like, no father of my children is going up on that active volcano like that. She didn't know what I did. She actually like had no clue like what I was going out with, 3 or 4 or 5 times a week, out on the volcano. She had no clue until she saw the footage. She's like, you can't do this. I'm not going to be left alone with these 2 kids. And so that's when I started, putting all my eggs in the basket with the Hawaiian language movement, the Hawaiian Renaissance, and work with Hapuna Leo, Lamaku, the university, Imiloa, more recently Kamehameha schools, now that they've switched over to more Hawaiian-based education. And, so yeah, that was my 20-year journey after that. And I became the largest producer of Hawaiian language media in the state. And I did, the KITV Hawaiian Word of the Day for a long time. I did a lot of stuff, and I still occasionally get gigs from them. Like I've been editing some podcasts by them called Pana Points, which has been really interesting. I love working with the Hawaiian community because I learned so much about this place and its history.
So let me get my jaw off the floor from everything that we've gone through right here. I'm just like, man, if anybody ever bitches and whines about their job sucks, the shit you just explained that you had to do. Oh my God. But that also goes to show that a lot of times when it comes to these make or break moments, we literally have that moment to make it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've blown those moments too. I have other stories like that I've blown those moments, and it wasn't hot. It was actually an air conditioned room at the top of creative arts agency in LA with Julia Roberts' agent who was thinking about taking me on. And I totally blew that meeting, but make it or break it.
But that's and I definitely hope the audience takes a lot away from what you just shared with us, because man, I'm over here like I'm still trying to get my jaw off the floor. Jeez. Okay. Let me compose myself. All right. Okay, so another thing, I know we mentioned it, you mentioned it earlier when you were talking about, your childhood and dealing with different mental things. Like for me, like I have severe depression. I have PTSD as well from childhood traumas, coming from a very abusive family and whatnot. And there are a lot of times like I still deal with it every single day. And my wife was like, get your journal, document it, make sure you go see your therapist. But it's like, I found, especially in doing podcasting, working as a creator, working with other creative people and interviewing people like yourself and such, that a lot of us that have these struggles are some of the most creative people that there are, and it's amazing to me, like how we're able to take our experiences, our traumas, and be able to focus that energy in a creative project. Like, is that ever super difficult for you being able to work through that, or like what would you say your experience is?
I No, being creative, I don't find it difficult. It's more like an exorcism, if anything. It's
Mm,
bringing people into like and sharing, and that feels good because maybe
mm-hmm.
it can help somebody else. I think that the reason why so many creative people have struggled is because we're just more empathetic. That we feel so much more. Like I always remember my dad always saying, "Why do you feel so strongly? Why do you see colors? Why do you see things in such bright colors?" It's like
Mm-hmm.
that's how I see the world, and I'm like a sponge. And part of the reason why I live in rural Hawaii on the most rural island and the most isolated archipelago in the world is because, like, when I was around cities, I was exhausted from everybody else's emotional roller coasters that they were going on.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody, two people have a fight in with an earshot of me, and like, God, I got to go take a nap because like that goes right through me, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and and my therapy now, like the thing that works best for me, and this plays into Mermaid's Lament, is going out in the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Going swimming way the fuck out in the ocean. And I've got some crazy friends that do it with me. Anybody else would go like, "What the hell are you guys doing swimming a mile offshore, 2 miles offshore?" I mean, we seriously had boats come up to us like, "You guys okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're great. We love it out here." You know, um, that's what brings me peace. That's what centers me. That's what makes me feel sane in this crazy freaking world. It's what gets my breathing right. It cleans out my brain. All those other voices that we have, like father's voices, mother's voices, teachers' voices, all those things that create doubt in you, make you feel less than human. Those all
Mm-hmm.
get quiet. You swim down and get face to face with some sharks, or even a manta ray, and all that shit goes away really quickly.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, the ocean does it for me, and that was part of the impetus to do Mermaids Lament. It was one of the core themes in Mermaids Lament of how healing the ocean can be, and how important that is.
Yeah, it's very like there's a tranquility you get from going into the ocean. Like every single day, I have a family routine where we go on a walk around Magic Island, right outside of Waikiki, and then after our walk, we'll go swimming for a bit, and it's like a detox, and just
Yeah.
detoxes. It just chills all of us. It definitely chills out my 3-year-old. She's got too much damn energy, but like it's there's just something about it, and I'm the same way as you. Like when I'm around people too much with if I'm within earshot of anything, like even with my neighbors and the condo that we're in, like I'm just like, oh god, I need a reset. And
Yeah.
it's interesting seeing how society now views mental health. Like I can speak for myself. Like growing up, I was always, hey, you need to man up, stop thinking about that, stop being emotional, all this other bullshit. I can imagine, you being older than me, like you seeing how it was to where it is now. And it's got to be, I guess, in a way, refreshing to see that we're able to have discussions about mental health at this point and things that stress us without people trying to like shoot it down or fuck with us about it. What are your thoughts on
Oh my God, this would be like a whole other podcast. Yeah,
that?
when I was growing up, like bullying was accepted. It was just like boys will be boys, like, yeah,
Yeah.
but he just beat the shit out of that guy. He's not gonna be able to walk for a couple days. Like, yeah, but he'll get over it. It'll make him stronger. I mean, my dad would say that to me. He's like, oh, you got beat up at school. It just makes you stronger, you know?
Hmm.
And so, yeah, it's great that we have these anti-bullying policies, and it's great that that like in Kamehameha schools, they have an in-class a therapist that goes through all the classrooms and checks in on the kids, and hopefully that becomes more common in other schools too, because it's pretty easy to identify the kid that's not fitting in and not engaging, you know.
Hmm.
But if nothing's done about it, it just gets worse and worse and worse until the kid, you know, does something bad, whether
Yeah.
it's externalizing it or internalizing it. So yeah, we've made there's a lot. We still have a long ways to go, but it's great. And also I'm as much as our politics sucks, we've come a long way in identity politics. And, hopefully we don't backslide this next election, not to get into politics too much, but, we've come a long way. I mean, when I made my first directorial debut, Strange Frame, there really wasn't any media out there for lesbians and trans people at all. And that was only a decade ago, we were the second animated feature film to have a lesbian main character, and we were the first one to have any trans characters at all in the US. So, and that's only 10 years ago. So see how far we've gone. You turn on, like, there's even Y7, like kids stuff that has lesbian characters and trans characters, So it's like we've come a long way, super, super far. So yeah, we still have a long way to go too. I mean, there's still like trans people are targeted heavily, and we have this possible backslide in the next few months. So we still have a long ways to go.
I hope we don't backslide. I'm praying we don't.
I have like, I'm starting to like do the outline of my exit plan. Like, oh my God, if it gets bad, Jesus. Yeah. Did we cover it? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. And that's one of the things too. Like I find it interesting. I know people call it the culture war now, but like I see it, especially when it comes to video games and anime and whatnot. If there's a character that is lesbian or trans or gay or any of that, the first thing you got the people who will go, oh, this is woke, this is that. Why are they putting that in there? And I'm like, they're people like all the rest of us. Like this idea of trying to demonize them is just horrible.
Well, the basic thing is that white, and when I say white, I mean like white Anglo-Saxon white. There are segments of the white population that have had to struggle, like the Irish and the Italians and all that. And so but the center of our culture has always been white. And there's a shift going on, and they feel threatened by that shift because they used to always be the hero. They used to be always the center of every single thing attention. John Wayne, Luke Skywalker, Captain Kirk, it's like, it's all white dudes. And when I made Strange Frame, I was like thinking, far into the future, like Star Trek kind of far in the future, there ain't going to be no more white people. I'm sorry. Everybody's going to be like Hapa this, Hapa that, like in Hawaii. And on top of that, they would have been fucking with their genomes. They've been hacking their genomes, and they'll have all these modifications. They ain't going to look like no white standard het cis male, and if they get the hankering, they're going to go down to the corner store and switch out their sex, too. So like most of the science fiction is still vanilla as fuck. If you consider, I don't know how much I'm allowed to swear on your podcast, but it is completely vanilla as fuck. Because, any deep thinker, if you think far into the future, most guys at some point in their life, like, well, what's it like to be a woman? I'll go down the corner store and switch out for a week. Hopefully my other guy friends don't find out. I mean, that might be that kind of vibe, but you can have the option. Guys are going to try it. Guys are going to want to have their own boobs for a week, if it's not a big thing, they're going to try it. And, it's like most people are on some sort of spectrum as far as their sexuality. Like 10% are like strictly hetero and 10% are strictly homo. Most of us are like somewhere in the bisexual spectrum. But yet our culture is still heteronormative and still heavily biased to white people. Like, I love Star Trek, and Strange New Worlds is a great series, and still the lead is a white dude, Discovery, not so much. Discovery is great, Michael's black woman. I love that. But, it's still like Strange New World. It's like, I mean, I know they're trying to riff on the whole Captain Kirk and throw it back to the original series, and that's probably why they're doing what they're doing. And they have had trans characters and non-binary characters on there, so they are pushing the envelope still. But like, I just think of the future, and there's not gonna be no white guys. I'm sorry, unless they do a mod. They like go in like, I want to look like John Wayne or Elvis Presley, and they go get themselves modded, so like to try it on, like kind of how people cosplay. It's like that might happen, but that the future is going to be way weirder and wilder than any of the science fiction besides my movie has shown you. So yeah.
Okay. I mean, and also too, like, speaking of culture, as you know, like I'm Hawaiian, I'm also Tongan and Samoan, and it's like I'm more,
Malalele.
yeah. I'm originally from Western Samoa. I'm from Mosula and it's Savai'i, and like in Samoan culture,
Oh,
like
dude, how old are you? When were you
35.
born? When were you born?
88.
Dude, you're probably just a baby. I was there in like 87 and 88 in Savai'i.
What?
Yeah, I almost got married off to one of the chiefess's daughters when I was there back then.
I can believe it too. I can believe it. Yeah. Oh man, isn't it beautiful?
Oh no, it was so beautiful. I mean, when I was there, it was like there was almost no power. There was like 2 or 3 vehicles, and the whole island, like my impression, like that there's one big flatbed truck, and then the police officer who was continuously stoned and drunk, who was my best friend. He had like an old Land Rover that he was driving around. Yeah, it was. I mean, it's part of the reason why I'm here in Hawaii is that when I was there in Hawaii, the vibe was so perfect. Like the people were so just how people should be, Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure it's gone through a lot of growing pains now, but back then there was this semi-idyllic vibe still going throughout the whole place, that people got plenty fish, just from fishing, plenty food from the farms, like all the way up to the volcano. And just the vibe there was just so good, and kava ceremonies everywhere, and that's one of the main experiences. Like I also had an incredible experience in Fiji and Tonga at the time. I spent most of my time in Tonga. I spent a couple months in Tonga 2 years in a row. And those experiences, basically, that's why I'm here in Hawaii, like that whole, we're on an island together. We're going to take care of each other. We're going to raise each other's kids. We're going to make sure that nobody's left behind and that everybody has a place in society. Like, in Tonga, that the trans people, they have a specific role in funerary ceremonies that nobody else can do. Guys can't do it. Women can't do it because you can't touch the body at the certain transition moment. And so the trans person is the only person who can carry the spirit basically over from life to death. I mean, that's super fucking important, like I'm getting chicken skin just thinking about like those moments that I saw when I was there, I freaking loved it. And Savai'i was super magical, super duper magical.
Yeah. And that's literally like the stuff I was gonna touch on is like how in Tongan and Samoan and even Hawaiian culture, it's with trans there's the role, it's integrated into the culture, and it just seemed, and I think for me, because I didn't go to the US until I was 7, 8 or so years old, and so like going, and my dad is originally from Memphis, Tennessee. So I got to go there, and it was very different going there and just seeing how people view, people who were gay at the time, that was very taboo, and just the race relations. And then like, if you were mixed, that was completely taboo. And it was such a disgusting, I know people will get mad at me for saying this, but it was disgusting having to see how just fragmented and just the way people were. And in many ways, it's, I don't know. I haven't been back to Memphis in a while, but I hear the South has not gotten that much better. But, just American culture, I feel like there's a lot that needs to be worked on. Yeah. It's slowly getting there, but we got a long way to go.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. I mean, shout out to Beale Street, though, in Memphis, because fucking the blues there are amazing. Yes. But yeah, I didn't. In some ways, I didn't want to come back, but in some ways, I also wasn't ready to like give up Western healthcare completely.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time I kind of was like I got a scratch when I was in Savaii on my foot and got
Good luck with the doctors
infected.
there.
Yeah, no, I got infected and I tried to treat it and shit like that. And I got back and I continued to try to treat it myself. And then like it was getting really bad and these sores were opening up all over my legs. And like I went into a Western doctor and they're like, yeah, if you waited another 2 weeks, we'd have to take the foot off because you have a really bad staph infection.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's good that I didn't make the leap because I wasn't ready, like with, the wholeness of it to understand what you need to bring to that experience, but yeah, it was an eye opener. It's part of the reason why people want to tell stories is that I primarily pick stories where I can give voice to the unheard, that I can tell stories that about people that aren't being heard in a way that they feel validated. And that's always been my goal. And that's why I work with the Hawaiian community. That's why I did Strange Frame. And that's why I did this new movie, Mermaids Lament. Is like, I want people to feel that they're part of an ohana, that they're part of like something greater than themselves and included. They can feel, for lack of a better word, aloha. They can feel that there's people out there that care about them and care what they're going through.
Yeah.
So yeah, we all need a little bit of that.
We do. We definitely do.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about was when it came to working with the cast, like I know we talked a little bit about, working with Deva, but like how was the entire cast? Like getting that ensemble together it seems magical. But if you feel like it, would you like to dive into it?
Well, I'll talk about the two leads because we spent most of the time with the two leads. So we got Deva, and I explained how I got Deva. But I put out the word through some friends of mine to try to find the other lead actress, this older therapist character, and Jackie Davis, who's in the theater program at UH. I contacted her. We're old friends. Like one of my first projects I worked on was trying to do a documentary about John Newble, a Samoan playwright. So going back to that. So that's how I connected with her way back in the day. And so I said, hey, do you know anybody? She's like, I'll put the word out. And she put the word out to Yastena, who was trying to find somebody for me. And then Yastena looked at she's like, why don't I do it? Why don't I audition for it? And so she auditioned for it and she was really good. And moreover, that Deva had been her student for the past 4 years. And the film is very intense. The actresses, I knew the actresses really needed to trust each other because they were going to go at it. And they're going at it in a heavy way. And so there had to be a high degree of trust. And so to have that, they had already been very vulnerable before with each other in the theater arts program. That was just such a bonus. And that they'd worked together before on theater productions. That it just seemed like a perfect fit. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. It just worked. It worked really good, And I don't know if I could have gotten performances like I did if they hadn't had that history, because I think that any other actress would have held back. I'm not going to go at this other person this way, like I don't really even know them, what if I hurt her? It's like, they trusted each other. And so they really went at it. And it was incredible. Yeah, it was really incredible.
So awesome. And, you've won a lot of awards in your career. Like, what does that feel like? Like getting an award and the acknowledgement of it? Like, is it surreal or is it like, how would you describe it?
I think my brain is wired really badly for awards because it's kind of like, love languages, like gift is one of the love languages. Like somebody gives me a gift, it registers a big 0 for me. Like I cannot receive gifts. And it's the same thing with awards. I get an award and I'm like, God, I hope this helps with marketing. That's what my brain is like. Like I don't give a fuck that I got an award. I hope this makes it easier to get the movie out. It's like, I hope this brings in more work. It's like that. I really, it doesn't do anything for me. And most awards are so politically driven and all that. I mean, we did win out of the blue this United Nations award at the Big Sin in London, which
Mhm.
that like, yeah, I don't have any connections to that film festival. And that film festival is like 90% documentaries because it's all about sustainability. And we won Best Feature, out of hundreds and hundreds of films that were
Mhm.
celebrated by this festival. Like, whoa, that came out of blue. And they put up a piece of our movie on the big Jumbotron on Piccadilly Circus and all that. And like, that was kind of like, wow, but it was like, I hope that it helps with marketing. Words don't mean anything to me. I hope that it helps me reach a bigger audience. I just want people to see the movie. I could give a fuck about awards. I really don't give a shit.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, and also like when it comes to like I know we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, but like having to be on social media and utilizing social media for promotion, it's how draining can that be for you with when you're trying to promote your work?
Thank you, my 22,000 so and so followers on Instagram. My underwater stuff that I do is 90% stress free. Like I want to have a record of my underwater experiences, and putting them up on the internet and sharing them seems like it's like journaling or diarying,
Mhm.
so that's not much work. But like tomorrow I cut a promo for Mermaids Lament, and I got to put it up there and then set up all the marketing stuff and do the targeted ads for it, and make sure it's out there on all the different Facebook groups that might be interested in it, and do it in such a way that I don't offend the moderators of the groups. It's like really exhausting. Like I'm like budgeting a few hours just so that I have downtime in between, because it's exhausting and it's like it's
Yeah.
not fun at all.
Yeah.
And it just seems opposite of the creative process. It seems that it's like you're taking something like this movie, like, read the reviews. People call it magical. They call it a magical
Yeah.
movie, and taking it and then boiling it down to like, okay, we have a soundbite that you're going to watch, and hopefully that'll inspire you to watch the movie. No, go out and watch the movie, experience it. Go, people, get your friends, tell your friends about it, have a watch party, and watch the movie, and then discuss it, because it's not like Hollywood movies. It's something different for everyone. Everybody who watches it takes something completely different away.
Yeah.
It really, like, when I was working on the rough cuts, I sent it to one of my friends, and she was a buyer for like all the big companies. She bought for like MTV, she bought for Disney,
Mhm.
and she has a perspective. She's Russian, and had to escape Russia after the stupid Ukrainian thing.
Yeah.
But she had a very different perspective. And I sent it to her, and I'm like, what about the ending? I'm not going to like give away the ending. And so like it's very ambiguous, because I think it's more powerful. And she's like, leave it. She's like, this is the kind of movie that needs to be made. These are the kind of movies that we need to have now. She's like, it's so tiresome, the pat endings that most movies have. Your movie ended the perfect way. And so, yeah, like people should see it and then try to figure out, was she really a mermaid?
Yeah.
And what does that mean to you if she was, and if she wasn't, what does it mean to you? Yeah.
It keeps people talking about it. That's the best type of work that's out there. One of the last questions, definitely being respectful of your time, and thank you for the time you've given me.
I'm trying to be respectful of your listeners' time, because I could rant forever, man. I just don't want to bore your listeners.
No, man. I'm having a blast, and if they don't like it, hey, they can deal with it. Keep watching,
Okay.
keep listening. Anyway, one of the last questions I do want to ask you is like, what are some of the misconceptions about Hawaii that people, not from here constantly get wrong, that you see a lot of?
Huh.
I
I don't get out much, so I don't know what people like. Yeah, seriously, I don't get out much. Like, I don't have my finger on the pulse of everything. I think there's so many things that people get wrong about Hawaii.
We live in huts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that people think it's paradise and everybody has it easy here. That's one of the big ones. It's way wrong. That
Oh
this
yeah.
is like the disparity between cost of living and what you could actually make here is huge. It's like bigger than any other place in the country. It might not be the most expensive place to live, but when you look at the wages that people make, yes, it's the most expensive place to live.
Yeah.
So, and people, don't know about our terrible meth problem because of all that financial pressure. A lot of people turn to drugs to solve that. And then out of that, we have domestic abuse problems that are through the roof because of this, this terrible way that Western food came into a non-Western diet. We have huge high diabetes rate. And it's unlike on the mainland where people are, getting overweight because they're eating foods that ancestrally they ate and they're just eating too much of them. Here, Hawaiians just eat a little bit of fatty food and they blow up because their bodies aren't designed to process that. They were designed, protein, starch diet, like kakalo, yams and fish,
Yep.
None of this other shit. And so high diabetes because of that. And, there's so many things that people misconceive about it. And depending on where you live, the weather can be hard, not so much anymore. But when I moved here, we could have 40 days and 40 nights where it just never stopped raining. And everything was molding, just living in mold, and never dried out. And then you could have windstorms, huge windstorms. We have earthquakes, 700, 800 people lost their houses in a volcanic eruption. I mean, it's it's not that, picture postcard that everybody thinks it is. And tons of people move here thinking it is. And then, they have to deal with, it's hard. I always say, think about living in the outback in Alaska, but warm. Everything that you need in the outback of Alaska, that's the Big Island. That's what you're going to need, those kinds of skills here. Because if something breaks, my generator radiator blew right before I left on my last trip, and I had to fix most of it. I finally got a friend to help me right before I left, but I had to yank that thing out. I had to take it all apart. It's that's the kind of skill set you need in rural Hawaii. It's not like you call up a service provider. You call up a service provider. It's like, I'll get to you in April 2025. I got a block of time. I don't know what it's like in Oahu, but that's what it's like on the Big Island. Seriously, I was trying to see an audiologist, and they seriously said, we have a spot April 2025 for you to see an audiologist.
I can relate to that because my wife is actually from Molokai, and so over there, especially where her where she grew up and where her parents are currently living, her brother, it's like that. Yeah. If something goes down, it's no, you're going to be waiting a long time, and people just don't understand that concept at all.
And it's part of also island cultures. The reason why we live here is we don't want to be part of the hustle culture, And so, that plumber that you call up because your toilet blew up, he doesn't want to give up his surf session to fucking deal with your toilet. He'll come after his surf session because otherwise, why the fuck are you living here? So, I mean, there still has to be a certain degree of hustle because of the economic realities, but nobody wants to give up their quality of life to chase that dollar. I mean, again, why the fuck did you move here? Why the fuck did you leave it? And people that are moving here, don't fucking put that pressure on people, because that's why you moved here. You moved here to get away from that shit. Don't fucking be spreading that shit, If you like the chill vibe, be chill.
Yes. Oh man. So GB, is there anything you want to leave the audience with before we go?
That I'm sure that every single person in your audience knows an artist or a musician struggling. That please, 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 when they're promoting their album, when they're promoting their movie, Mermaids Lament, when they're promoting their stuff, support them. Send it out, share it with friends, do it. It doesn't cost you any money. It takes a little bit of time, but it's the only way that they can survive. They don't have a marketing budget. They're not going to become known just because they have a great song. They're going to be known because you shared their great song, because you talked about their great song. And it's the same thing with this movie that we get. It's a very small movie. We made it for blood, sweat, and tears, Mermaids Lament. It's on Amazon right now. And if you all go out there and watch it and give it really good reviews, Amazon will bump it to international, and they'll first bump it to international English language, and then they might bump it to international other languages, but only with your support. And that, like I said, that goes across to all your artist friends and all your musician friends. Go out there. You don't necessarily have to spend any money. Just get the word out. Share the work. Because without arts, what do we have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is something that, I constantly try to tell people, like, it doesn't take anything for you to like and share something. It's literally milliseconds to just do that. And it's amazing how people, and this is me getting on my soapbox. I do this occasionally, so don't mind.
Do it.
But,
do it.
Whoa. One of the things that just fucking irritates me is you will see a big name celebrity and people they don't care what it is. They'll like it, they'll share it, they'll comment, they're engaged with it. But if it's somebody that they know, they don't typically, or more often than not, they won't share it. They'll look at it and go. And it's like, all you have to do is the same thing you do for the person that you actually are interested in watching or listening to or whatever. It doesn't take anything. Audience, I'm talking to you guys now. It takes nothing for you to like and share the work of those of us who are independent, for all intents and purposes, independent entertainers. We're entertaining you. We're creating content for you, be it film,
podcasts,
YouTube videos, whatever. We're creating this content. And if you can take the time to do that for a celebrity or a brand or a sports team or whatever have you,
that doesn't need your help because they have millions of dollars of marketing budget.
Exactly.
We don't. You are our marketing team. Our community, our Ohana is our marketing team. And without you, we sink or swim. It's just like, if you want us to swim, if you want to be part of our posse when we're successful, you got to be in the trenches with us and just help us out. But like you said, just share. Just let people know it's out there. Maybe you have a friend that's struggling with depression, somebody that's struggling with trauma, or somebody that loves mermaiding. It was like, love The Little Mermaid, the original one that came out in the 80s, but now they're grown ass adult and they have to deal with grown ass adult stuff. Mermaids Lament's for them, but they don't know about it unless you tell them about it. Because as much, even if I spend even if I had tons of money to spend, not Hollywood money because I don't have that, but even if I spent like $1,000 on Facebook, your friend's not going to probably hear about it. But if you tell them about it, they might watch it, and that might help them. And then they might tell somebody else, and then it might help another person. And then suddenly we have something. The magic spreads. And do that not just with Mermaids Lament, which is on Amazon. Do it with all your musician friends, all your artist friends, every creative person, your podcasters that you listen to. And thank you so much for having me on this. This has been freaking awesome. Mazeballs. And maybe next year when I'm working on my next movie, we can come back on and cover all the things that we didn't talk about.
brother, you don't even have to ask. This is a guarantee. Whenever you want to come on the show, you let me know. We do this.
Okay. Well, there's a novelization, a book version of the movie coming out this winter, and maybe we'll come back on that.
Hey, I'm all for it. Where can people find you?
You find me on Instagram is the best place if you want to see all my underwater stuff at GB Hajim. That's Hajim, GB Hajim on Instagram. And I believe, I'm the only GB Hajim in the world. There's not that many of us Hajims. Us Syrian Jews have been picked off. So you can find me pretty much everywhere just by Googling my name.
Okay. All right. And I will leave links to Mermaids Lament as well as your social media and everything else in the description down below. This episode of the podcast will be available on all major podcasting outlets. Again, thank you to our sponsor of the podcast, Spotify, for sponsoring this show and helping us go from just doing this for fun to doing this as a career. Thank you, Spotify, for that opportunity. And yes, this will be available in video format on Spotify as well as on audio format on everywhere else, video format also on YouTube. And with that being said, people, We want to thank you. Have a blessed and aloha rest of your day, and we will see you on the next one. If you enjoyed this episode of the podcast or any of the other episodes that we've done so far, if you've enjoyed any of the conversations I've had with the guests that I've had on the show, or just general topics that you guys have thrown at me or that I've researched and we've just talked about on the show, then do me a solid. If you're listening on any of the major podcasting outlets, make sure you leave a comment, leave a rating or a review, because it greatly helps out the show. If you're watching the show on YouTube, which airs every single week, then make sure you sub to the channel, youtube.com/@Mekel Kasanova, or just youtube.com/Mekel Kasanova, or even do us an even bigger solid by liking the video and sharing it with someone you think would find some enjoyment out of it. And all that being said, I hope you guys continue to enjoy this podcast and the content we put out here, because hey, we do it with a passion and we do it for you. So with that being said, I catch you guys on the next one. Stay safe, be blessed, and I'll see you around. Peace.